am happy to be with you today. I'm going to give you a little bit of my story in the beginning, and then I'm going to give you 11 things I wish I'd known when I started my coaching practice. So I graduated from IPAC in 2016. And it's been a great journey. I went to coaching school because I was on a non-compete period for 1 year. I had a garden leave, which is a very oil industry thing. And I wanted to be a better leader when I went back. So I went to coaching school during that year to work on myself. I had had coaches before when I was in my organization, but I also knew that there was a transformative process to who we are and how we're choosing to show up. I remember when I paid for my coach myself, my senior vice president at the time, he goes, "You don't need coaching." I go, "Of course I do." And I paid for it myself for many, many years because I knew that it grounded me in who I wanted to show up as every day. And so these are the things that made me want to become a coach, but also have grounded me in who I am and how I'm choosing to show up in the world. So I'll start you off. Stop thinking small. 11 things I wish I knew about the business of coaching. So it all starts in 2018 with an ICF South Florida meeting that happened in January at a Seasons 52, back when we were in person, and we were doing things around. There was a North meeting and a South meeting, always in the same day. Matt was our president then. And I went to an event. And I was like, you know what? That year I decided, actually in 2017, I went to an event that was at South Florida. It was at the Smith & Wollensky. And I was like, you know what? I haven't joined. I should join. And so I joined that year as one of my New Year's resolutions. So if you're not a member, go ahead and join as I walk you through. So in January, at the beginning of the year, I was getting a certification on a 360. I work in organizations helping leaders build better relationships with the people who matter most. I sat next to this woman at that certification, and I was like, she's like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" One day at lunch when we're going through the process, I said, "I would love to write my own now coach education program." And she goes, "You should." I go, "Really?" She goes, "I did it for the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management inside the federal government." She goes, "I led the team. I'm an organizational psychologist. I led the team. You absolutely should do it. You can do it." She goes, "I'll tell you the outline, the process that we used, and how we went through it." And I was like, amazing. Then I went to this event. The speaker at that event challenged all of us to think bigger. That was the invitation. I found it in my email when I was putting together the talk today. This is the power of intention setting. I then went to a conference a couple weeks later, and one of the speakers was this man. His name's John Maida. He's a chief experience officer, well-known in the tech and design space. But before I went in, I set the intention that I wanted to build a relationship with him. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it was going to happen. So it was at FIU, so easy lift. I live in Miami. I go, as I'm walking to the event, the session before, so I could make sure I had a seat, because he's a pretty well-known speaker, South by Southwest, and at the time, he was chief design officer for Automatic. They went on to become my client. I said, "Hi, John," and he goes, "You know who I am?" I was like, "I watch all of your South by Southwest talks." And he goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "That's amazing." So I sit down, I was like, "Okay, universe delivered, done." He sits down 2 seats away from me and starts to talk to me before the other speaker goes on. Gives me a gift, we start talking more. He goes on, he goes, "I might mention you on my talk because you're the only person I know in the room." I go, "Great." He mentions me. I was like, okay, universe delivered, fantastic. I go sit down and have lunch at the next break. He sees me and he goes, "Can I have lunch with you?" I go, "Absolutely." Sits down at my table. We talk for an hour and a half. I was like, okay, universe delivered. Wasn't done delivering. That night at the dinner, I ended up talking to him for 4 hours, right? We exchanged information. He goes, "Do you understand how you need to think bigger?" Because he asked me about my business, the coaching practice, and I was like, okay. And so he was on the board at the time of Kleiner Perkins, a VC firm, and he was going on and how startups really do scale. And he goes, "Nobody's really doing that in the coaching space." This is before BetterUp had gotten their SBIR grant. And so I was like, okay. So we thought a little bit more. Then the next day he goes, "I don't want to seem like the creepy guy you met at a conference, but I'm getting together people in Cape Cod in 6 weeks. Somebody canceled. You'll have to pay your own way. This is a non-sponsored conference, but it's a small room with a lot of big thinkers. I would love for you to join us." It was chief design officers of some of the biggest tech corporations in Silicon Valley. Here we are. By the way, doing craft and design projects for 4 days and talking about our experiences. Not sponsored, we all paid our own, not fancy, but about 35 people who were also challenged to bring people who were just starting their careers and they needed exposure to get a better network, right? So that's Joan Shigawa. She's amazing. She ran the National Arts Foundation under in the Obama administration. She tells, like, I went to Washington at 70, right? She used to work with Gloria Steinem at Ms. Magazine and produced the TV show when it was on PBS, right? But she grew up in an internment camp. It sets a trajectory of how, when you're interned, what things happen for you. So that's Joan and John. Great people in my network, advisors. It's a really tight community John curated. Then, after I went to the event that I was invited to by the ICF chapter, I go to the next event this person holds, and I meet my Mod 1 instructor. She was there. I hadn't seen her since Mod 1 at IPEC. So she's like, how are you doing? We kind of caught up. It was amazing to see Jen. Then I went to another event. By this time, we're in May of 2018. And it was about small business in Miami and what we can do to get into the government contracting space. So a little bit more about 2018 and kind of where it went. I decided I was going to lean into everything local because there's high proximity in being known in the cities in which you operate. So this was another event. This is Black Tech Week that happened in Miami. This is the women's brunch. This is, I met some other people at a conference. She asked me if I would come to Silicon Valley and facilitate a retreat for women in the Sequoia Forest just outside of Silicon Valley, but maybe an hour away. This is our dinner photo from one of the nights, right? That was June of that year. We're still going. At that conference in March, I had met a group of women who were WeBank certified. They invited me to go to the WeBank conference in Detroit because I never would have gone. I didn't know about it. I said yes. It was like sort of my year, yes, but not really, but just my year of like, be intentional. How about in the rooms where you're going to show up? So I go. That led to a magazine article because when we met in March, we all decided we were going to meet every Monday. And we've been meeting every Monday since March 2018 because that initial invitation at Seasons 52 in Coral Gables, I never would have met them. Magazine article about the power of people getting together to talk and coach each other through where they would like to be. Through John, I meet Haj. My friend Milica, who is in Serbia, and she's a PCC coach, she went to coaching school probably like 4 months before me. She goes, I'm at a conference in Serbia on tech, and she goes, your face came up on the screen. On WhatsApp, she's texting me first thing in the morning. She goes, Ebony, Haj used my story, right? That's the power of story. People respond to story, they remember stories, they repeat stories, which is why I'm telling you a story, and then I'm gonna give you my action items for today. She sees me, takes this photo, shoots it to me on WhatsApp from Serbia. She's involved in the Serbia chapter there. And I was like, wow, look at that change. It's only when I was reflecting for the talk today that I really saw this arc that kind of came through of coaches, of saying yes, of being in rooms, of being invited, of leaning into organizations in your community. By the way, still high proximity, right? She's local here. And then we did a photo shoot when we were in the Sequoia, in the Redwoods. And so I did one, and I was like, heavy is the head who holds the crown, but chooses to. So in that photo shoot, took a bunch of pictures. We all did beautiful photo shoot. It was part of the retreat. I say this to say, you have to decide what's your intention for today. You came to the conference, you bought a ticket. Yes, we'll learn more coaching skills. Janet's gonna ground us in who we are and how we should think about the future. Dory's gonna talk to us about playing the long game. I'm gonna talk to you about what's your vision for your practice. And if your vision is, I'm happy where I am, and I'm making the money I want, and I have that flexibility, that's phenomenal. If your vision is, I wanna reach a little bit more, I'm not quite happy where I am, what should you be thinking about? I want you to lean into that. It's in that feeling you'll begin to explore and make additional connections. None of these things showed up as neon signs. You know, how in life, it's all like breadcrumbs. It's a hello here, it's a hi, how you doing? It's asking a level 3 question. Oh my gosh, I love your shoes. Where'd you get them? Right? It's in that level 3 engagement, that level 3 listening that we all do as coaches, that we begin to see some of those breadcrumbs or threads that we need to pull to figure out where we would like to go next. I do the IPEC definition of leadership. The leader is the person who in the moment knows the next best move. Next best move. You don't need to know where you're gonna be in 5 years. You just need to know where you're going tomorrow, right? How do you lean in to that feeling, to that thing that we all have? So, 2019, I met Cassie. This is my first cohort that got accredited. We launched in October. I asked 8 of my friends, they said yes. They paid me, because money is currency, and you need to move energy around the room. And they joined, and we did a hybrid model where we're partially online and then partially in person, and this was the retreat weekend. I rented an Airbnb, just to be honest, keep costs down, not a hotel. They all stayed in hotels, but I held the sessions at the Airbnb for 4 days. And we went through the training process. The first woman I said hello to when I went to Mod 1 at IPEC is the person who was my co-facilitator, because she held me accountable to write every morning to get the project out. So that's my group. They call themselves hashtag 38 degrees. We figured out between all of us, we had 38 degrees, college degrees, between the 10 people in the room, right? There's a bunch of overachievers in there. One of them has 7. I was like, why do you have 7? She was, girl, I'm retired military. We can go to college for free the entire time we're there. I went to college for free. She goes, I have 2 PhDs that they paid for, right? She's like, I joined the military for opportunity, and I promised myself that I was gonna take every opportunity available to me, right? So that's why she has 7. And I remember one guy who was friends with her, because I didn't know her, he told her about it. She goes, if you're going, I'll go. And I was like, great. And he says to her, are you counting like associate degrees? And she's like, yeah. He goes, oh, I have 4 of those, fine. I was like, you do? He goes, yeah, I got a degree in nursing, I have this. And I was like, and he's a leadership coach, right? He was an organizational development person. So just being in the room and getting ideas and having people support you. So the things I wish I'd known: know you. That's what I'm gonna say. Who are you? How are you wired? What are your boundaries? What's your aspirational vision? Plain and simple. I'm gonna get us on track. We're gonna be done at 12, don't worry. Focus on the close. This is the thing I didn't know that I needed to know. Whether you are somebody who's helping others design a better life, or helping team members have better relationships with each other, or a fitness or kinesiology coach, or a spiritual coach, lean into those things. How can you close in an authentic way with your clients? I didn't understand that part, and I was in sales before that. I was trading oil. Like, I wasn't just at an oil company as a chemist. I spent my last 13 years trading oil financial derivatives, exactly. So know the close, figure out what that looks like. For me, I would set goals on different levels. Can I get this in a 30-minute conversation? Can I get this in a 1-hour conversation? Can I get this in less than 3 meetings, right? And it was in that kind of aspirational building myself up as a leader, and also getting really good at talking about my services. This is my process. These are the things I've helped others achieve. These are the tools that I use. If you tell me your goals, I will reframe that in a way that appeals to you. It's in those conversations that the closes became easier. And then work on scaling your project size after that. Go from a $5,000 close to a $50,000 or $150,000, right? Those are all possible. So think about what that looks like for you. Then select the methodology that you're gonna follow as a business owner. I've used several along the way. Pick a book, pick a podcast, pick a leader in the industry, and then figure out what 20% of what they're saying that you're not currently doing that you could apply to yourself. 20%, that's all you need, 20%. Then I'm gonna say to you, think about doing mindset work regularly. Jenna did that for us every day. I got a CEO practice in place for me. It aligns with my values. It made me start waking up earlier. I know I need time to learn, to reflect, to think about where I am and how I'm showing up. So for me, my day starts like around 5 o'clock. I spend about 2 hours on me. And then I take that kind of recharge and think about the business after I invest in me first. My goal always is to give myself the first 10% of my day. 440 minutes in a day, you're looking at, about a couple hours, right? I tell my clients to start off with 5%, which is 72 minutes. So 30 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes midday, and another 30 minutes to wrap up your day with a little bit of reflection. But figure out how much of your day can you invest in yourself first so that you can begin to pour into other people on a consistent and regular basis. The other thing I want to talk to you about is looking at where your upper limits are. This is the work of Gay Hendricks. He does a lot of work on this. So listen to his podcast, read the books, but also think about where you're upper limiting yourself. And then move the bar just a little bit. If you're happy where you are, then be happy. I'm all for not growing and celebrating where you are in the milestone that you've reached. But if you feel like there's room for something else, something more for you, then just move the goalpost slightly. You're not going to compare yourself to other people because, comparison is the thief of joy. But think about, Janet talked about what's your potency, how can you do a little bit more? It's okay in moments to say, this is my season of celebrating where I am. And then it's also okay to say, this is the season where I'm going to try a 1% or a 5% or a 10% shift to do a little bit more growth, right? It's in that growth that we get a little bit more satisfaction from the days that we have. Next slide, mastermind. So I told you I met those women. We've had magazine articles. We always do photo shoots because we get together, and who doesn't like to kiki? We're a bunch of coaches, right? So we meet every Monday. We'll get together in person. This is a photo shoot we did. We added one additional person, and it's good because we're all at different levels. We all serve a similar client base, but in a slightly different way. We don't ever feel the thought of competition, but we also look at what the infrastructure of the business that we have looks like. This week we're talking about about laws that are going to go into effect in Europe in 2023 and what's going to set us apart, right? Many of you may not be thinking about an ESG policy, but it's something that lots of people are asking for. Other people are asking for a WACAGs, which is about accessibility, right? And are the things you're creating, do they have that? Me, I didn't know I would need a GRI 405, which is a diversity and inclusion statement, right? That's asked for. It's in the new credentialing standard for ICF coach education as well. And so just kind of knowing what's happening in the zeitgeist and how can you become that practice of choice. Because in many ways, we know there's lots of coaches created, but becoming the coach of choice that aligns with the ideal client that you would like to serve can help you if you get some of these foundational things out of the way. You get to shine as the coach, but you won't have application anxiety because you've already done the infrastructure work when asked. So that's the case I make for that. So find a group of people. They could be in this room. We met at a conference similar to this one. We don't pay each other. There's no fee. We just get together and we have consistency and commitment to each other and also to the goals that we set. So think about the business models. I want you to understand, if you haven't, what's the business of coaching? What does it look like? We have heard from some of the OGs in the coaching world that started off with Thomas Leonard, but I also want you to think about the people who are doing it now and what the coaches who coach coaches, what's their business model? What are the things that they kind of espouse? Is it a group that's for you? Is it okay for you to read their book, to listen to their podcast, to go to some of their entrance events, right? Think about the people that you know and who aligns with you. For me, what I spend a lot of time, I'll tell you, going to events, and this just isn't for coaches. This is how many badges. Seriously, I've saved every badge, right? I took this seriously. This is every badge of every conference I've gone to, and none of the virtual ones that have happened in the past 2.5 years. These are all in person. So you'll see it's everything from One's on the National Small Business Conference in January for 8A companies, because I'm a federal government contractor. I'll get into that later. It says minority-owned, prime contractor with the federal government, women-owned, black-owned. We have other ones around small business conferences here in Nashville in 2019. Where's other ones? Women Impacting Public Policy. National Conference for the Lobbying Group for Women-Owned Businesses in the federal government contracting space. It's everything here, all the in-person ones. It's my badge of honor that I stare at every day in my office to remind myself why I'm doing this. Why I'm doing this. So here you go. This is the work. We all know it takes work. Understand the business of coaching and what it looks like. And what parts do you want to adopt as your own practice? Intellectual property. This is a big one for me. And I don't know if it's because I'm an INTJ or I'm going to say this to the Colby facilitators. Angie, I'm a 5'8", 5'2" on Colby A. Maximizer is my number one strength for all the strength finder people out here as well. So think about what that looks like for you. For me, IP is an asset. Creating IP sometimes can be a business. What do you do with the asset that you've developed that you can share it with the world? People like to know how you're thinking, what you're doing, what your thought leadership is on that. A lot of the times that I spend in the morning in my morning practice is literally scanning the horizon. I use a process called foresight strategy, and I look to see what are the trends we're seeing out there in the world. I have a list called Signals, a Signals database. I'm a part of a think tank in Silicon Valley that we always talk about what are the signals we're seeing, what skills will you need? Janet talked about the World Economic Forum. In 2020, the World Economic Forum changed the skills that leaders would need to survive in 2025. One of the thought leaders that I do follow, who gives a prediction that's about 80% right since 1970, he talked about the pandemic and pandemics in the era of 2020 and 2030 when he published his book in 2012. And he said, these are the skills the organizations will need in order to thrive. I started leaning into that think tank back when I started my business. People were always like, why are you talking about VUCA? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous organizations. Now, it's really what helped me thrive and scale when we were under that phase in 2020. So look at what the thought leaders are saying, do the research, get journals, look at what IBIS is saying about our industry. All of those things matter when you're thinking about what do you want to do at scale. For some of you, you're going to think, okay, I'm not really interested in that, and that's okay. But what 20% did I share today, that I'm sharing today, could you use? You don't have to use everything that I'm saying because I'm throwing a lot of seeds out there, but what 20% could you use? Is it that you're going to join our chapter, right, and lean in and get great bench members like Angie when we're partnering on projects, or get introduced to speakers and processes that you haven't thought about? At that Smith and Walensky event, Magda, you were actually there. Yes, she was. Yeah, she was. That was my very first event. Right? It was a great event in that sense. She was there. And I had just left a client meeting. And you know what the client said to me? We've enjoyed your coaching. How do I get you off my expense line item? We like a coaching culture. And I said, I could create coaches internally for you. He goes, talk to me about that. I need a plan to get you off of my expense list. And that's when my idea for Coach Education group was born, right? Because it came from a client need. I listened at a level 3 level, and I thought very much in a way like, how can I think of ideas to help him with this particular issue? That's what made the relationship valuable for them. So figure out what 20% do you want to take? What are your clients saying to you? And what kind of IP could you create around that to help them, to serve them, but also authentically align with who you are as a coach and how you're choosing to show up in the world? Is there an outsourced partner? Because not everybody wants to sit down and write like some people. But there's a lot of people that have a business around helping you create IP. That could be the partnership that you need. I partnered with an accountability coach who helped me through the accreditation process, because not that it was difficult, because now that I look back, it isn't. It was me dealing with my own application anxiety around writing the process and getting started, right? Because application anxiety is real. I talked myself out of it so many times. So think about what that looks like for you and how you're moving forward. Who's your outsource partner? So then the next thing I'm going to think to you about is review your prices. If you look at the IBIS study and the information that's out there, we're not charging anything for the value that you deliver. That's part of the application anxiety we all feel. Think about what that looks like for the marketplace that you're serving. And if you're looking for a place to kind of benchmark if you're doing large organization work, the government has a website. If you Google e-library, it will tell you what the GSA contract holders have, and then you can charge much more for commercial. But that's kind of the average pricing, what's happening inside of the federal government space. And you could also do it for the state government as well. So think about what that looks like. And are you in the right space? Because one, you don't want to be worried about how you're going to pay your utility bills while you're doing this job if you haven't built a practice that can kind of fulfill that. And so are you thinking big enough in order for you to meet those goals? Team. So teaming with others is super important. Either JV with other coaches. I still JV, by the way, all the time. Bench for other coaches and organizations. Still do it. It's how I got my hours. I can't sell enough to get the hours that I needed, but I can partner with people who have larger contracts, right? That's how I got involved with FIU. They needed coaches. I'm a coach, happy to help in. You know, they gave me a significant amount of my hours, and I didn't have to go out and do the business development. I just had to do the scheduling. So for those of you who are looking, you know, to make it from your ACC or get your ACC or your PCC, these are pathways that can help you with great experience around coaching, but also you don't have to sell it yourself. Hire an assistant. I got somebody offshore at first. First, just to do PowerPoint slides, and then a couple of things that I needed around building spreadsheets for tracking hours and things that I wasn't great at and I didn't want to learn, but I could hire an assistant for. And I would do just little project by little project, and then I eventually built up my team here in Miami, and then also my offshore team that works with me consistently. So think about when it was the assistant for me, because I told myself I couldn't afford it for years. The stories you're probably telling yourself. And then I started with a small project. And I actually spent the most money when I had no revenue coming in during the pandemic. Because I asked myself, what can I do with this time that could serve me at the end? Lubna? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So think about, you know, resource and investing in yourself to move forward. And team, really, really team with people. It works. Get your ICF levels. It's changed twice since I graduated in March of 2016, right? I worked really hard to get my PCC, like coached like crazy, binging for everybody who would have me. Everybody who would have me. I got it, and I was like, okay, I'll be MCC, blah, blah, blah. And then it changed in October 2017. And they moved the goalposts, which is okay. I still worked to get it, to coach even more. It took me a lot longer than I thought initially, but you should make sure that you stay on track. Like, things are gonna change. The industry is evolving. The amount of coaches in the industry are evolving. What does that look like for you? Do you have a plan to acquire those hours? Are you gonna join a barter coaching program? Can you bench for somebody to get the hours? Do you want to join a platform like BetterUp and become one of their coaches and dedicate 5 to 10 hours a week so that you can get those hours to stay on track and practice coaching and build the skill set that'll make you a more valuable coach to your prime clients that you'll get along the way? It's in the conversations of building the coaching, of doing the actual coaching, that you're able to feel more confident building your coaching practice. And it also sets your own methodology of how you onboard clients. What tools, what steps help me build out my process map that I can share with people very easily. By the way, that process map, when I'm selling it into organizations, when they see that, they're like, oh, okay, so this is real. I was like, yeah, it's real. Here's our process maps. This is how we work. This is how we work in a triangular relationship between client, coach, and sponsor. This is who you engage with on our team on the project management side. This is the slate of coaches we have available to you. This is kind of how it works. Building that process map, getting the credentialing is super important. The other thing is, and I'll tell you, I do government contracting. All of the coaching contracts say ICF accreditation. They do. ICF's done a good job with that. They all say ICF accreditation. The one that I'm currently writing that came out yesterday said we prefer for our GS 13s to 15 MCCs, right? For our GS 12s to 11, a PCC credentialing for that one. In addition to experience and degrees and blah, blah, blah. But they do specifically call out ICF accreditation. So if you're thinking about those things, it does matter. It is recognized. It's in RFPs when you see it. I have corporate clients who say, yeah, we only want PCC or above coaches on the contract. I'm like, great, we can do that for you, don't worry. We have those level of trained coaches that have that level of experience. So recognize that and get your levels. Get a coach. I have like 6, if I'm being honest. I'm not like a coaching junkie, but I recognize the value of expertise and coaches in my life. I have a comms coach who helps me with writing speeches. We talk about like, are you on stages enough? Are you getting out there? I have one that talks to me about mindset, that does a little bit more around life coaching. I have one that talks about life coaching. I have one that we're talking about finances, right? Because we all have a money story, whether you embrace it or you didn't have enough or you had too much or you're not good at managing it. The finance coach helps me get track on my money story, right? What's that money story we all kind of tell ourselves? Maybe it's one of the things that's helping you with not living to your full potential and helps you cap you. So, my conference intentions that I started, and this is with the very first conference, and I did this with my peer coach, actually, and that first conference badge is somewhere in here. Let me find it for you. It's this one, Summit. I was still on garden leave. I had finished Mod 1. I finished Mod 2 at IPAC, and she goes, what do you want from the conference? I was in a peer coaching session at this point. A peer coaching session in practice and coach education. And we came up with these intentions that I still use to this day. I would challenge you to ask you, what's your practice for every room you step into? What's the intentions that you want to set? And what are you looking to achieve when you're there? So for me, it's to learn as much as possible. Step out of my comfort zone. I told you I'm an INTJ. I get my energy from myself. I'm like, oh, somebody else wants to talk to me. Okay, hi. Right? At dinner last night, I said, Dory was like, oh, I'm an introvert. I was like, oh, I'm sitting next to you. You're not going to talk too much. It's 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to sit exactly next to you. I was like, where are all the boisterous people? They all look like extroverts. Okay, let me avoid them. Hi. We just had great one-on-one conversation, right? So think about stepping out of your comfort zone. Also, how can you harness the energy in the room to help propel you forward? Is it a story? Is it an event? After every speaker, I ask myself, what are my top 3 learnings that I heard from that particular speaker, right? What can I pursue as a consequence of the talk that they just gave? And how does this inform in some way what I want to do with my coaching business or life? And the last one, I either create SMART goals or FAST goals around the learnings, and then create a schedule and calendar to kind of move those ideas forward. You know, I'm a long line follow through, so Angie's like, of course you create a little process around it. It's how I'm wired. I don't fight it. I lean into it. I create a process. So that may work for you, may not work for you. Maybe you're a quick start and you think about things in a slightly different way. But doing that connection, using your extroversion, all of those things that make you authentically who you are, how can you bring that to your conference attendance? Remember, mindset shift. Better daily awareness gives you better results so that you end up with better choices. It's in that shift, in that investment in yourself, that things will begin to change and expand for you. It all started with me, was sitting next to Cassie and telling her what I thought about, because I was at Smith-Wolinski in October of 2017, and I had just come from a client meeting, and I remember talking to the person who was there. He was like doing credentialing, and I was like, he goes, call me. I'm here to help you. Like, By the way, super nice at ICF headquarters, in case you want to think about something else. Like in the sense of I can ask questions, people respond. If I send an email, people get back to me. During the pandemic, I remember Raquel sending me emails. She goes, we can talk really quick, but I'm gonna tell you how the process works. When you get this series of emails, that's how you know we are working on your accreditation for your program right now. And we would like for you to respond to us fairly timely because you're now live in the queue. It was in that level of communication that I found the level of comfort. And I remember a couple of weeks in, I'm like, so I haven't heard anything. She goes, because it's going well. You're fine. Don't worry. And I was like, okay, right? And I was like, oh, Raquel's super nice. And so thinking about what that looks like for you as you begin to lean in so that you can get a different set of choices. Here we are, 2022. This is my most recent graduate from a federal agency. I won a competitive award contract last year to create internal coaches inside of this agency for their internal coach cadre. So they graduated virtually. We did the entire program virtually this year for them. They were based from the East Coast to Hawaii. And so everything is always in the afternoon when you have to do all of those time zones. And we had a really great experience. I knew they leaned in because we were probably a couple virtual sessions in when real emotions started to come out and people were bringing their authentic selves to the education process and leaning into their emotions and what the transformation could look like for them. This is my most recent WeBank conference that I went to in June with friends from South Florida and that initial group of ladies that I met at that conference in March 2018. We got together and had fun before the conference started. And then here's me with the project manager on my team. She's based here in Miami, Irma, at WeBank, kind of taking that picture. You saw that picture of the letters that first year in 2018. And this is kind of me giving you a little bit of a follow-up of the story. As you're kind of leaning in, figure out what that looks like for you and how you can show up. This one is 2 weeks ago. I had a dream client list. They asked me to tell them a testimony of what it would look like to go through their vendor setup process and what it looked like to be a successful vendor for them. And so that's the interview that I did for them 2 weeks ago. As you're building out your practice, think about who your dream clients are. Are they organizations? Are they agencies? Is it in the federal space? Is it individuals? Maybe you're serving a group of people who need a lifeline. Can you lean into the spaces and places in which they are and how they're showing up so that you can move your practice forward? So the question I'm going to leave you with is, what is your cadence? What's your cadence to building your business and living the life that you've always dreamt about? And have you chosen, as Janet said, to use your full potency, or are you in a celebratory phase? And understand the cycles of where you are inside that cadence, because that's really important as well. It goes back to the know yourself.